Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rebecca Skeel, and this is my fourth video in the month of Radical Loving. And I want to welcome you if you're here with me live or you're watching at a later time. This is a series of videos this week in particular. A week I feel is very important to talk and articulate what is in our hearts. And this particular expression, this focus of radical loving is what is in my heart at this time. And I know there are so many energies and different levels of waters that are being stirred very deeply during this time, and particularly in this week. And this focus of radical loving was actually given to me as a challenge about 2 weeks after the election, from the energy that was working with me at the time. So, Rebecca, what are you going to do with your radical loving now? And I really didn't have an answer for that. In fact, I didn't want an answer for that. I wanted to just crawl under the covers again. And yet I couldn't, and sat with it and sat with it and sat with it and realized that this was a way for me to move into sacred action, which is what I really want to talk about today around radical loving. Let me back up a bit for a moment, just in case this is the first time you've found one of these videos or stumbled upon them or whatever. There is a series of them, so if you'd like to go back and listen to what I've talked about up until now, you can find them on my Facebook page, Rebecca Skeel. You can also find them on my YouTube page, Rebecca Skeel, and you can also find them on my website, RebeccaEskeel.com. I'm not going to recap so much today. I want to talk about sacred action. You know, some of us don't consider who we are or what we do as sacred. In fact, maybe you're one of those. Maybe you're one of those that say, wait a minute, when you talk about sacred, you're talking about something outside of me. You're talking about something that some authority has said this is sacred, etc. Well, I'd like to suggest to you that what is sacred in your life is actually something that you can decide. What is the definition of sacred? Well, there's lots of definitions of sacred. Holy and blessed are two very common definitions. But what I consider sacred is anything that you are or do in the world that is a blessing. Anything you are or do in the world that is a blessing. I consider that sacred. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Patty. I see a little pop up here. I'm trying to be more interactive on Facebook Live. So, what if radical loving requires us to move into sacred action? And I want to say that sacred action can simply be how you show up. How you show up in your families, in your relationship, in your community. And yet I also want to say, though, that for many of us, we are called more into beyond that, into some kind of action. So I'd like to read a little bit about what I wrote about sacred action, because when I read it, I go, well, I said that so well, I need to read it. And then I'll talk about it. Our bond with the sacred is not in righteousness, but in aligning each action with wisdom, loving, and what each of us holds as holy and blessed. We must be responsible for the fire in our hearts and constantly bring our projections of wrongdoing back to ourself for inner reflection, acceptance, and forgiveness. I haven't really talked about this part of radical loving yet, but I want to talk about it now when we talk about sacred action. And that is righteousness. What do I mean by righteousness? I mean feeling that we are right, knowing we are right, and being proud that we are right. That to me is righteousness, and that's not what sacred action to me is. Sacred action to me comes from wisdom and loving and self-reflection and contemplation. In these times, for me, it is as important to be in our own process and do our own inner work as it is for us to move out. The waters that are currently rough out there, and we in radical loving, we don't want to add to the rancor. We don't want to add to the division, to the separation. At least that's not what I'm talking about. And I also know I'm not talking about to everyone here when I talk about this, but I am talking to millions of us when I talk about this, because there are those of us who want to walk through these times and align what we are doing and saying and showing up as with our deepest wisdom and our truth and our loving. And I call that radical loving. I actually call that ability to do that radical, far-reaching, impactful, fierce, bold, and also kind. I go on to say about sacred action. The fire of sacred action ignites inspiration, liberation, freedom, and upliftment. Hey, Brett. Hey, Deb. In the presence of hate, loving. In the face of lies, truth. In the energy of fear, courage. And in the depth of darkness, light. Radical loving affects the fundamental nature of the underlying causes of what is not loving. I'll say that again. Radical loving affects the underlying nature of what is not loving and creates far-reaching and thorough change. That's what I'm about these days. That's what I'm bringing forth, these teachings, these thoughts, these sharings. And again, I want to say this is an open conversation. This is not just about me or my thoughts. I'm really hoping you will jump in at any time if you feel so moved. Or perhaps you've never thought about this, and that's really okay too. But if you have, join in the conversation. Because it is going to take all of us to write this new story for ourselves. We are walking through unprecedented times. Yes, we have been in dark times before. Yes, we have been in scary times before, challenging times. And yet this feels very unprecedented to me in my lifetime, this lifetime. So we need a new story. And it's going to take all of us to write it. And this is my contribution at this time, talking about radical loving. So, put that paper down. Tomorrow, I will be talking about the cost for each of us in stepping forward with radical loving. You didn't think there wasn't a cost, did you? Yes, I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. So once again, thank you for being here. I loved seeing you. Sharing so others can jump in with such a... Steve. Hey, Steve. Hi. Love that you're watching. Thank you for being on the call live. I mean, on the Facebook post, or whatever you call this, live. You know, my phone rang a few minutes ago, and I thought, if I'm on live, and my phone rings, does it interrupt my live call? I hope I don't ever have to find that out. Anyway, that's for today. Radical loving and sacred action. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. And yeah, consider that everything that you do or are that is a blessing is sacred. Bye for now.